I'm 58 years old now, and for 30 years I've been carrying a secret that completely changed my view of what exists in the deep forests of the Pacific Northwest. My name is Marcus Sullivan, and in 1995 I was a search and rescue agent working in the Cascade Mountains in Washington state. What happened during a rescue operation in August of that year challenged everything I believed to be possible. This is the story of how an 8-year-old boy survived alone in the forest for 2 days, and of the impossible creature that kept him alive. But before continuing, if you enjoy incredible and mysterious stories like this one, leave your like on the video and subscribe to the channel by activating the bell so you don't miss any new stories. This helps me a lot to continue bringing quality content to you. Now let's get to the story. August 1995. Summer was at its peak, and the Cascade Mountains were filled with families camping, hiking, enjoying the last days of warmth before autumn arrived. I was 28 years old at the time, working as a search and rescue agent for 5 years. I had participated in dozens of operations, found people lost, injured, some alive, others not. I thought I had seen everything. On August 12th, around 6 in the evening, we received an emergency call. An 8-year-old boy named Tommy Henderson had disappeared during a family hike in North Cascades National Park. The family was doing a moderate trail about 5 kilometers into the forest when Tommy simply vanished. One moment he was there, the next moment he had disappeared. When we arrived at the starting point, it was already getting dark. Tommy's mother, Jennifer, was hysterical. The father, Robert, was trying to stay calm, but I could see the panic in his eyes. They had another child, a 5-year-old girl who was clinging to her mother, crying. "He just wandered off for a minute," Jennifer sobbed. "We wanted to take a picture of the landscape, and when we turned around, Tommy was no longer there. We called out, we searched, but he simply disappeared." Tommy was wearing a red t-shirt, blue shorts and black sneakers. He was small for his age, weighing about 25 kilograms, short brown hair. A typical child, curious, energetic. Robert showed us a recent photo. Tommy was smiling broadly, holding a fish he had caught. We set up the operation immediately. Our team had 12 people, plus local volunteers who knew the area. We had tracking dogs, radios, powerful flashlights, first aid equipment. The protocol for a lost child was clear. Act fast, search in expanding circles from the last known point, check all dangerous areas first, rivers, cliffs, caves. But there was a problem. The area where Tommy disappeared was vast, densely forested, full of ravines and streams. An 8-year-old child could be anywhere within a radius of several kilometers, and night was falling fast. We divided into teams of 3 people each. My team included Sarah Chen, an experienced paramedic, and David Rodriguez, a tracker who had grown up in these mountains. We were assigned the northeast sector to search, a particularly difficult area with rough terrain and dense vegetation. "Tommy!" we shouted as we walked through the dark forest. "Tommy Henderson, if you can hear me, make noise. We're here to help you." Only silence answered, punctuated by the sound of our footsteps on dry leaves and the occasional rustling of small nocturnal animals. The tracking dogs managed to pick up a trail initially, but lost it near a stream. Water eliminates odors, makes tracking almost impossible. We searched all night. At dawn on the 13th, we were exhausted but continued. More teams arrived from neighboring cities. Helicopters flew over the area. Local media was covering the story. Tommy's photo was on all the news. 8-year-old boy lost in Cascade Mountains. Search enters second day. Jennifer and Robert were at base camp, unable to do anything but wait. I could see hope draining from their eyes with each passing hour. Statistics weren't encouraging. Small children lost in the forest rarely survive more than 48 hours, especially without water, food, or adequate shelter. And Tommy had already been lost for over 12 hours. During the second day, we expanded the search perimeter even further. We checked caves, abandoned camping areas, anywhere a frightened child might hide. Nothing. It was as if Tommy had been swallowed by the forest. David, our tracker, was perplexed. "This doesn't make sense," he said, as we examined the area around where the dogs had lost the trail. "An 8-year-old child can't move that fast or cover that much distance. The trail should continue, but it simply disappears here. Maybe he went into the stream," Sarah suggested. Children do unpredictable things when they're scared. We followed the stream in both directions for kilometers. Nothing. As night fell on the second day, August 13th, the situation was becoming desperate. Tommy had been lost for over 24 hours. The temperature at night dropped to about 10 degrees Celsius. A small child in light clothing wouldn't survive many nights like that. Dehydration, hypothermia, injuries, wild animals, there were so many dangers. We held a team meeting at 8 at night. The operation coordinator, a veteran named Jack Morrison, looked at all of us with a somber expression. "We'll continue through the night, but be realistic," he said. "If we don't find Tommy by tomorrow noon, we'll have to consider that this operation may become a body recovery, not a rescue." No one said anything. We all knew what that meant. We returned to the forest. My team took a new sector, further north, an area that hadn't been completely covered yet. It was old-growth primary forest, enormous trees centuries old, ground covered in thick moss, little light even during the day. At night, with only our flashlights, it looked like an alien world. We were about 8 kilometers from the point where Tommy had initially disappeared, too far for an 8-year-old child to walk, especially on difficult terrain, but we had to check all possibilities. Around 11 at night, while we were taking a break to drink water and check our maps, David suddenly raised his hand, asking for silence. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. Sarah and I stood still, listening. At first I heard nothing but the normal sounds of the forest. Then faint, very faint, I heard something. A sound that wasn't animal, wasn't wind, wasn't water. It was a voice, a child's voice. "There." David pointed to the northeast. "Come on!" We ran in the direction of the sound, stumbling over roots, pushing branches, shouting Tommy's name. The voice became clearer. It was singing something, a song I didn't immediately recognize. "Tommy!" I shouted. "Tommy Henderson here!" The voice responded, weak but definitely real. "I'm here." We followed the voice for maybe 200 meters until we reached a small clearing. And there, sitting against the trunk of a giant tree, was Tommy Henderson. He was alive, awake, apparently unharmed. Sarah arrived first, kneeling beside the boy. "Tommy, oh my God, Tommy, are you okay? Are you hurt?" Tommy blinked at her with big, curious eyes. "I'm hungry," he said simply, "and I want my mom." We examined Tommy quickly. Some scratches on his legs and arms, probably from bushes. He was dirty, covered in mud and leaves, but he had no serious injuries. No signs of hypothermia, although he was shivering, no animal bites, no obvious fractures. Considering he had been lost in the forest for over 24 hours, he was in remarkably good condition. David immediately grabbed the radio. "Base, this is Team 3. We found Tommy Henderson. I repeat, we found the boy. He's alive and apparently in good condition. Coordinates are..." He read our GPS numbers. The radio exploded in celebration. Even Jack Morrison, always professional, couldn't hide the emotion in his voice. "Excellent work. Team 3. Bring him back. The parents are here and can hardly wait." I wrapped Tommy in a thermal blanket and gave him water, which he drank eagerly. Sarah offered some energy bars, which he devoured. As he ate, I began asking the standard questions. "Tommy, can you tell me what happened? How did you get separated from your parents?" "I saw a squirrel," Tommy said with his mouth full. "A big red squirrel. I wanted to take a picture with Dad's camera, but the squirrel ran away. I ran after it, and when I stopped, I didn't know where I was anymore. I tried to go back, but everything looked the same. Classic story. Child gets distracted, follows something interesting, becomes disoriented. Happens all the time." "Where did you sleep last night?" Sarah asked gently. "You must have been very scared." Tommy looked at her, then at me, then back at Sarah. He had a strange expression on his face. "I didn't sleep much," he said. "It was dark and I was scared. I heard strange noises. But then the big man came." "Excuse me," I said, sure I had heard wrong. "What?" "The big man," Tommy repeated as if it were the most normal thing in the world. "He found me on the first night. He was very tall and covered in hair. At first I was scared, but he was kind. He gave me fruits to eat and took me to a safe place under a big tree. He stayed near me all night to protect me." David, Sarah, and I exchanged glances. Lost children frequently have hallucinations due to stress, fear, dehydration. It wasn't uncommon for them to invent imaginary friends or see things that didn't exist. Tommy, Sarah said in a soft voice. You were alone in the forest. Your brain sometimes creates images when we're scared. There was no man, but there was, Tommy insisted, his voice getting higher. He was real, very real. He gave me fruits. Look. Tommy reached into the pocket of his shorts and pulled out 3 small wild fruits. They were wild blackberries, common in this area, but perfectly ripe and clean. You picked these fruits yourself, I suggested. No, Tommy said firmly. I didn't know which fruits were safe. My dad always told me never to eat anything in the forest without asking first. The big man gave them to me. He knew which ones were good. David took one of the fruits and examined it. They're wild blackberries, he confirmed. Edible, nutritious. But Marcus, look here. He pointed to the surface of the fruits. Even in the dim light of our flashlights, I could see that they were perfectly clean. No dirt, no insects, as if someone had washed them carefully. They might have been washed by rain, Sarah suggested, although it hadn't rained in the last few days. The big man washed them in the stream, Tommy said. He showed me where the water was clean to drink too. He didn't talk, but I understood what he meant. He was like a very big bear, but walked on 2 legs like people. He had kind eyes. A chill ran down my spine. I knew the stories, of course. Everyone who works in the Pacific Northwest forests knows them. Sasquatch, Bigfoot, legendary creature that supposedly inhabits the mountains, avoiding human contact, leaving only occasional footprints and unconfirmed report. I had always dismissed it as folklore, campfire stories, nothing more. But the conviction in Tommy's voice was unsettling. He wasn't lying, at least not intentionally. He really believed he had seen this creature. Tommy, I asked calmly, can you show me where this big man left you? Where you slept? Tommy nodded and pointed across the clearing. Over there. It's not far. He brought me here this morning and said, he paused, correcting himself. Well, he didn't say with words, but I understood that he wanted me to stay here near the big trees. He said that people would come find me here. Against my better judgment, I decided to investigate. David, stay with Tommy. Sarah, come with me. We followed in the direction Tommy had pointed, about 50 meters until we reached an enormous tree, a Douglas fir that must have been at least 300 years old. At the base of the tree was a natural depression, almost like a small cave formed by exposed roots. Sarah illuminated the interior with her flashlight. There, on a bed of ferns and moss carefully arranged, was what clearly was a place where someone had recently slept. The moss was compressed in the shape of a small body, and around this space, like a protective nest, there was more vegetation arranged in a way that didn't seem natural. Children don't do this, Sarah whispered, especially terrified and lost 8-year-old children. This requires knowledge, skill, planning. I silently agreed. I looked around the immediate area and something caught my attention. Impressions in the damp soil near the nearby stream. I approached and knelt to examine better. They weren't Tommy's footprints. They were too big, much too big. About 40 centimeters long, 5 toes clearly visible, deep impression indicating substantial weight, and they were barefoot prints, but not human. The toes were too long, too spread out. Sarah, I called calmly, you need to see this. She approached and illuminated the impressions, her face pale. What is this? I don't know, I lied, but we need to photograph and document. I took several photos with the waterproof camera I always carried on operations. I measured the impressions, 42 centimeters long, 18 centimeters wide at the widest part. Impression depth suggested weight of perhaps 180 to 270 kilograms. Then I found something else. Caught on a low branch near the improvised shelter was a tuft of hair. Long, thick hair, dark brown, almost black, definitely not from a bear, whose fur is different in texture. I put the hair in a plastic bag I always carried for evidence. We need to go back, Sarah said, her voice tense. Tommy needs to go to the hospital, be examined, and I need to get out of this forest now. I agreed. Whatever it was that had helped Tommy, real or imaginary, didn't change the fact that we had a child who needed medical care and desperate parents waiting for news. We returned to where David was with Tommy. The boy had fallen asleep, wrapped in the thermal blanket, exhaustion finally reaching him now that he was safe. David, I whispered, we found something strange back there. I'll tell you later. For now, let's take Tommy back. I carried Tommy in my arms, although he was heavy for a long walk. It didn't matter. We had found him alive, and that was all that mattered. The walk back took almost 2 hours. Tommy woke up halfway and talked to us, telling more details about his time in the forest. He described how the big man had stayed with him during the first night, keeping animals away, how in the morning the creature had gathered more fruits and even found some edible nuts, how he had been gently led to the stream to drink clean water, and Tommy described the creature's appearance in impressive detail. Approximately 2.4 meters tall, covered in dark brown hair, enormous shoulders, long arms reaching to the knees, flat face with wide nose, dark, intelligent eyes, no clothes, no tools, but clearly aware and intentional in its actions. When we finally arrived at base camp, around 2 in the morning on August 14th, we were greeted with applause and tears. Jennifer ran to Tommy, pulling him from my arms, crying uncontrollably. Robert hugged them both, also crying. "My baby," Jennifer sobbed. "My baby, you're okay, you're safe." Tommy was immediately examined by paramedics on site, then transported by helicopter to the nearest hospital in Seattle for complete evaluation. Mild dehydration, some scratches, but otherwise in excellent condition. The doctors were impressed. Children lost for over 24 hours usually presented hypothermia, more serious injuries, severe psychological trauma. Tommy had a bit of all of this, but much less than would be expected. The media loved the story. 8-year-old boy survives 2 days lost in forest. Miraculous rescue in Cascade Mountains. The Henderson family gave interviews. Tommy became a small local celebrity for a few weeks. But whenever Tommy tried to mention the big man who had helped him, the adults around him gently redirected the conversation. It was understandable, everyone thought. The boy had gone through a terrible ordeal. His brain had created an imaginary protector to deal with the fear, a normal psychological response to trauma. I could have left it at that, file it as one more successful rescue, forget the strange things we had seen that night. But I couldn't. 3 days later, on August 17th, I returned alone to that area of the forest. I didn't tell anyone. Officially, I was off duty. I took camping equipment, camera, evidence collection kit, and an open mind. I found the location again without much difficulty. The shelter under the tree was still there, although rain had begun to undo the careful arrangement of plants. The footprints were still visible, though less distinct. I spent the entire day examining the area. I found more footprints, all approximately the same size, forming a pattern that suggested the creature had patrolled around Tommy's shelter, keeping watch. I found more hairs caught on low branches. I found what appeared to be an observation point on a nearby slope where vegetation had been slightly flattened, offering clear view of the shelter below. But the most disturbing thing was what I found near the stream. Stones arranged in a deliberate pattern, creating a small dam that made the water calmer, easier for a small child to drink safely. No animal does this. This requires reasoning, planning, empathy. Something had been here. Something intelligent, something that had recognized a human child in danger and decided to help. I camped there that night, part of me hoping, part of me fearing that the creature might appear. It didn't appear, but around 3 in the morning, I heard something, a sound I had never heard before. It started low, almost subsonic, felt more than heard. Then it rose in pitch, becoming a long, modulated vocalization that echoed through the trees. It wasn't bear, wasn't elk, wasn't wolf. It was something other. I grabbed my flashlight and illuminated the forest around me. Nothing, just trees, shadows, silence returning. But I felt, with absolute certainty, that I was being watched, that something in the shadows was evaluating me, deciding if I represented a threat. Slowly, deliberately, I lowered my flashlight. I sat on the ground, making myself smaller, less threatening. I placed my hands open on my knees, palms up, a gesture of peace, of non-aggression. Several minutes passed. Then, at the periphery of my campfire light, I saw movement. A large, impossible form moving away in the shadows. Just a glimpse, a second, but enough. It was bipedal, enormous, covered in hair, moving with impossible grace for something so large, silently through undergrowth that would make me noise with every step. Then it disappeared, completely, as if it had never existed. I sat there trembling, not from fear, but from something deeper, wonder perhaps, or the weight of knowing something I shouldn't know, of having seen something that shouldn't exist. I returned to civilization the next morning. I submitted an official report about Tommy's rescue, mentioning only the facts. Child found in good condition, apparently had found natural shelter and food sources on his own. The photos of the footprints and hair I kept to myself. I discreetly sent the hair to a private lab that did forensic wildlife analysis, saying it was from an unidentified animal I had found. The results came back 3 weeks later. Mammal, primate, DNA profile not matching any known species, genetic similarities to great apes but with unique markers not seen in gorillas, chimpanzees or humans. The lab technician called me personally. "Mr. Sullivan," he said, his voice showing confusion. "Where exactly did you get this sample? Because if this is real, if it's not contamination, then you found something extraordinary." "Just a dead animal in the forest," I lied. "Probably nothing. Thanks for the analysis. I never sent the samples for further testing. I never showed the photos to anyone else, because I had seen what happened to people who claimed to have evidence of Bigfoot. They were ridiculed, called frauds, their careers destroyed. It wasn't a risk I was willing to take, but I kept returning to that area. Once or twice a year for the next 5 years, I would do reconnaissance hikes alone, always returning to that specific section of forest. Occasionally, I found signs, a fresh footprint here, hair caught on tree bark there, stone arrangements that seemed intentional, and twice, only twice I saw the creature again, never up close, always fleeting, at the periphery of vision, disappearing before I could focus properly. But enough to confirm that yes, something lived in these mountains. Something large, intelligent, and extremely good at avoiding detection. In 2000, I transferred to an office job within the Forest Service. My knees were too bad for extensive field work, but I continued living in the area, continued hiking in these forests, always alert. Tommy Henderson grew up. I became a distant friend of the family over the years. Tommy never changed his story. Even in adolescence, even as a young adult, he insisted he had been helped by a large, hairy creature during his time lost in the forest. His family eventually stopped trying to correct him, accepting it as an eccentric belief he maintained. In 2008, when Tommy was 21 and in college studying wildlife biology, he sought me out. We met at a coffee shop in Seattle. "Mr. Sullivan," he said, his voice serious, "you believed me, didn't you, when I said about the big man? You saw something there, something that made you think maybe I wasn't making it up." I looked at the young man before me, no longer the small child I had carried out of the forest. He was a man, intelligent, educated, rational. "Tommy," I said carefully, "I saw things that night I can't fully explain. Footprints too large for bear or human, hair that didn't match any known animal, a shelter that seemed to have been intentionally built to protect you." His eyes lit up. "So, you believe they exist? Sasquatch, Bigfoot, whatever name you want to use." "I believe there are things in this world we don't yet fully understand," I replied. "I believe you were helped by something in that forest, and I believe that whatever it was deserves to be left alone." Tommy nodded slowly. "I've spent years studying reports, evidence, sighting patterns. And you know what I discovered? Most encounters happen when people are in danger, lost, injured, vulnerable, as if these creatures have some protective instinct toward humans, at least some of them. It's possible, I agreed, or maybe they simply recognize when another being is suffering and decide to help. Empathy isn't exclusively human. We see it in dolphins, elephants, even crows sometimes. I want to spend my life studying them," Tommy said, "not to capture one or prove to the world they exist, but to understand, to protect their habitats, to ensure that if they really exist, they can continue existing without being disturbed." He kept that promise. Tommy became a wildlife conservationist, working specifically on protecting old-growth forest habitat in the Pacific Northwest. He never publicly proclaimed belief in Bigfoot, but all his work was built around the idea that these forests contained mysteries that deserved protection, known or unknown. As for me, I retired in 2015 at 48 years old. Chronic back and knee problems from decades of rescue work made it impossible to continue, but I never stopped thinking about that night in August 1995. In the last year, I began organizing my notes, photos and memories of that event and the years that followed. Not for publication, not to prove anything, but simply to have a record, so that if someone else, someday, has a similar experience, they know they're not alone, they're not crazy. Because here's the truth I learned in that forest 30 years ago. The world is stranger, more wonderful, more mysterious than we admit. There are things living in the remaining wilderness areas, things that have learned over millennia to avoid humans, to leave only the lightest traces of their passage. And occasionally, in rare circumstances, these things reveal themselves. Not for ego, not for curiosity, but for something simpler and deeper: compassion. The capacity to recognize suffering in another being and act to alleviate it. Tommy was saved in that forest not by chance, not by luck, but by something that saw him, recognized his vulnerability, and chose to protect him until human help arrived. Something that demonstrated intelligence, empathy, and a sophisticated understanding of human behavior. Call it what you will: Sasquatch, Bigfoot, unknown primate. For me, it has a simpler name: proof that there are still wonders in this world. Mysteries not meant to be solved, but respected. Tommy is now 38 years old. He works for the Forest Service, ironically, managing conservation programs in the same mountains where he was lost so long ago. He got married, has 2 children. He takes his children camping regularly, always with proper precautions, always respectful of the forest. And occasionally, when we walk together on those trails, we pass near that old tree where he spent the night 30 years ago. We always pause there. Tommy places his hand on the trunk, a gesture of gratitude. He's still out there, Tommy sometimes says quietly, or his descendants, watching, protecting, keeping hidden, as they always have, as they always will. I silently agree, because I know, deep in my heart, that he's right. Some people need proof, irrefutable physical evidence, bodies or captured specimens. But I had something better. I had a moment of connection through the darkness of the forest, a silent recognition between intelligent beings, separated by species, but united in understanding. That night in August 1995, 2 lives were saved. Tommy, obviously, taken from danger and returned to his family, but also mine, in a sense, because that experience fundamentally changed how I see the world. It removed the veil of certainty, of complete knowledge, and replaced it with something more precious: wonder. I'm 58 years old now. My hair has turned grey. My body carries the scars of a life spent in the mountain, but my mind still returns to that night, to the impossible sound echoing through the trees, to the glimpse of something large and impossible in the shadows, to the footprints that shouldn't exist, and to the most important lesson of all, that kindness has no species boundaries, that intelligence takes many forms, that the greatest mysteries are those we keep silently, protecting them from the destructive curiosity that so often defines humanity. Tommy survived 2 days in the forest when he shouldn't have survived even 1 night. He was fed, sheltered, protected, and gently guided to where rescuers would find him, not by accident, not by luck, but by something that saw a lost child and decided he deserved to live. That's what I choose to believe. That's what I know to be true, even if I can never prove it beyond any doubt. Because in the end, some truths don't need proof. They simply need to be honored, respected, and passed forward. To anyone out there who has had a similar experience, who saw something in the forests they can't explain, who was helped by something impossible, you're not alone. Your experience is valid, and the mystery you carry is a gift, not a burden. Keep it well, protect it, and let the forests guard their secrets, because some secrets deserve to remain unsolved. Some mysteries deserve to remain mysteries, and some silent guardians of the forests deserve to continue walking in the shadows, undiscovered, undisturbed, free to be exactly what they've always been, a wonder of this world we don't yet fully understand. Tommy is well now, thriving in his career and family. And somewhere in the depths of the Cascade Mountains, under centuries-old trees, in valleys that few humans will ever see, something still walks. Large, hairy, intelligent, compassionate, watching, waiting, helping when needed, and keeping the greatest secret of the forests alive.